name by grantor or grantee, your grantor being your person who gave it.
Now that's land type information on
Land
property
type,
transfers and all throughout
ownership,
your family
anything
history.
dealing with the dirt. Now we don't deal with houses and stuff, but we deal with dirt. But the grantee would be the person who would be getting it then, so you could search either way. But to get you started, I have found one. I've got a Hester and a Clyde Chronic.
That would be my grandparents.
Okay, where they borrowed some money from the United States of America, it says.
Really?
Which I think is probably Farmer's Home now, we call it.
Okay,
But,
that's interesting.
and I've gone ahead and pulled one of the books here and wanted you to see it.
Okay. Now does it say where this property is at, or is this just on the money,
It's just
the
kind
transaction?
of a brief description there to kind of let you know you're in the right direction. This one's at, it's 2.5 acres in Clincham District, which would be South Hall now.
Mm-hmm. That's probably Union Church Road, I would imagine.
Okay, that's where they borrowed the money and paid it off. But this is just a brief description of the properties. It looks like two different tracts.
And it was 1950, is that right?
May of 1950 when they borrowed it. They paid it off in 62, which, good time. One thing I thought was odd on this one is your father's name, or your grandfather's name, is the only one that's on the front, but your grandmother signed it. Which I don't know if her being there, they just decided to let her sign it too, or just kind of what was going on at the time. But
I've seen some interesting things doing this, of course, in all the different areas that we've searched, and some of the things answered questions, some of them raised questions. So it just gives you another. I kind of liken this to investigations, where you're just following a logical course of where this leads, and it's been, like I said, an interesting exercise in just the process, but also in learning and getting the information has been really rewarding.
You know, Uncle Joe might need a quick little few money, so Grandpa give him 2 acres so he can go borrow money off of that, and then when it gets paid off, Uncle Joe signs the property back over to Grandpa. So that happened a whole lot in the past too. Of course, if Uncle Joe didn't do too well, he stayed on the 2 acres. You never know, but it's interesting to know that these are people's lives. This is not just a piece of paper we've got stuck in a book somewhere. These are all people's lives that it dealt with every day.
Oh, yeah.
And that's interesting to me. I've enjoyed doing my family tree.
Well, to me, and tying things together like your property, and of course, and learning through some of our other, the journey here through learning this process, is that the tendency to marry people who were neighbors because you could not travel far distances. So the actual land and property holdings had a lot to do with how the families married, and of course had branched out from there.
Yeah, part of my family lived in South Carolina, and then what happened is a bunch of them all got together and moved to Georgia. Well, a lot of their neighbors bunched up and moved down to Georgia with them. So you had a lot of intermarriage because that's the only people they knew.
Was it Orangeburg? You may have came with the Chronics.
No, it was
that's where my family actually came from, South Carolina. Also after Philadelphia, and through there, what I've learned. Now, what other kind of things can we pull here in the deed room? Can we learn from our past here?
A lot of the old deeds have plats. Some of them are kind of accurate, and some of them are kind of not. But you can look at the plats, and of course keep tracking back. Your grandfather and grandmother had to get the property from somewhere. Those people had to get it from somewhere. And so it'll help you get a timeline of when your family moved here. Where did exactly they move to first. It gives you a whole idea of, I call it their trail, of where they go and what happens to them. And that's what family tree is all about. It's what happened to my family.
And the
who brought me here today.
Oh, yes, ma'am. And the plants are so interesting too, because you read the descriptions to this oak tree or to whatever. You may go 100 years later and there's no oak tree there, but I say that the way that
I
that
think
has
one of
developed.
yours calls for a rock and a stump. I saw one several years back that called for a car axle. Now that car axle's still there. So it's hard to go back now and walk this. That surveyor's nightmare sometimes is they have to take this and bring it to today.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
So,
well, I'm impressed that it goes back so far that we can search that here. And again, I guess you need to allow a little time when you come in, because you're going to have to, again, like it's an investigation, you're going to have to take one and go from there to somewhere else, but it all leads somewhere. I think that's the, seeking that out is the fun of this whole thing. Is every time you open another book, you learn something else about you and your family. And I think that's what this has all been about, is finding out who we really are. And it's hard to know without knowing where you came from.
What gave me brown eyes
Yeah.
You know, you can kind of track it down to these people and find out who gave you brown eyes.
Cheryl, again, thank you for meeting with us this morning. Thank you for all the information that you pulled together. This again has been a wonderful experience for me, and I appreciate the part that you played in this.
Well, thank you for coming by, and come by and look anytime.
Isn't it amazing what kind of interesting facts you can find in government records? Steve Cronick found property information at the Clerk of Court's deed room, marriage and estate records at the probate court, along with an archive of old newspapers. Andy learned that at the library you can search various history books written by genealogists, find obituaries, census information, and birth and death dates. These dates are particularly important if you're headed to the Hall County Health Department to research birth and death records. However, due to privacy laws, there are several restrictions involved with accessing these records. Peggy Cronick explains.
Most people, when they come, the genealogists, when they come, they are interested in the death certificates. The death certificates are opened up to the public. If they're not an immediate family member, they cannot get the cause of death. We do have a listings of the ones that can get the cause of death. We encourage people, they do need to know the date of death because we're filed by the date of death and then alphabetized. We will check 3 years prior and 3 years after the date of year that they give us for the death certificate to find it for them. Birth certificates, they started registering those in like 1919. Again, prior to that, they would have to check with the Georgia archives if we don't have it. The birth certificates are not open to the public. It's only certain family members that can get a copy of a birth certificate. They do have to bring legal picture IDs. If it's a family member or grandparent would have to prove that she's the parent of the mother or the father to be able to get that. Yes, we would like for people to bring with them their picture ID. It is a requirement for them to show a form of ID. If they do need the cause of death, we have a list of the ones that can get the cause of death. If they're not an immediate family member, they have to bring a legal document where they've been authorized from a family member to get a copy of the death certificate with the cause of death. It's a written notarized statement, but we do verify that person's ID that shows they are a family member for the genealogist to get the cause of death with the death certificates. Our death certificates go back to 1919, so prior to 1919, if they needed a death certificate, they would have to contact the Georgia Archives that's in Atlanta.
Today we've seen another of the many ways that Hall County government helps people connect. I know that for me and many of you out there, family is the most important thing in our lives. Exploring our past helps us figure out who we are and what we once were. I hope that you've enjoyed our show today and that it's given you a springboard to learn more about your family history using government resources. If you'd like more information about county departments, please visit us online at hallcounty.org or contact me at 770-535-8288 or nyoung@hallcounty.org. Thank you for watching. For Hall County Connection and TV 18, I'm Nikki Young.
You're watching TV 18, the government channel for Gainesville and Hall County.